Hello and welcome to the Stampscapes lab. We're going to take winter to fall. So in the latest two releases, as far as the nature sets go, they are snowy winter designs. So you have a tree like this one right here, and we can utilize it in a winter type of snowy setting. But I just want to show you, right now it's really fall, and how we can take this type of winter imagery and turn it into more of a fall color, full color type of scenario. And there's these trees called larch trees, and they're kind of, like a pine type of tree, but they do have fall tones in them, and I don't know. Are they I don't know what you call them, a deciduous conifer or something like that. I don't know. Maybe one of you guys can tell me. But okay, so I tend to do snowy scenarios with a lot of blue tones, cool tones. I mean, you can do it in warm tones as well, and that looks pretty cool. Like maybe if you do it on a vintage paper and you want to go for kind of more of an aged sepia looking scenario, you can do it on a warm toned winter scene, snowy scene. But okay, so I'm just going to show you how you can do these again in fall tones. Okay, so I like to get a lot of mileage out of my designs when I'm designing them. So, you can kind of specialize in certain types of scenarios, but designs are stamp designs are better if you can utilize them in more ways than one. So, okay, so with nature designs, we're talking about different types of seasons, and there's every season in between. So, one of the things that I like to do when envisioning something like trees is to see them in a certain type of seasonal scenario, but I also think about how they can be utilized outside of that, specific scenario. Okay, so this is just some semi-gloss cardstock right here. You can use a matte, and I have pre-stamped everything out, as you can see. And I'm going to go into this and just give it a little bit of a different kind of twist here from winter, snowy, to fall. You can mix it too. You can have like the first snow falling, or an early snow falling in, whatever, late fall, where you'd see some full color. I am coloring with just some soft Prismacolor colored pencils. You can use whatever type of coloring method that you want on this, especially when it's on this type of paper. I like using multimedia, so I lay down some colored pencils, but then I might use alcohol inks and acrylic paint pens, and I do it in a certain type of sequencing. For example, if I lay down the alcohol inks before I lay down the colored pencil, you can't really lay down colored pencil on the top of layered alcohol inks because it just doesn't stick. So, but you can put alcohol pens over the top of colored pencils. So, keep that in mind as far as sequencing goes. Okay, so just laying down some warm tones here. I went with some, it's not really a canary yellow, it's like a golden yellow, but I'm not using it in its full saturation. I'm just kind of going for a lighter saturation right now. And you can see I've picked out some colors in the color scheme with like a full range of tones within a given color scheme that I'm going to be going after. And let's see, let's add on some orange into these trees here. And remember, But you don't have to fully kind of conceptualize or visualize your finished piece. I certainly don't have something like that in mind for me here. But each step of the process does not have to look like a fully finished colored piece here. So I'm just kind of going really, with lighter tones at first, like this. It's kind of mellow. And that way I can always add more as I see fit. Okay, so I'm kind of going, I went with the browns into the cabin and on the ground down here, and I'm adding in some browns in here as well. Now I'm going with my kind of brighter tones like this. It's not super bright, but again, I want to see what these will look like with some layers of alcohol inks in here. I just think that different types of media bring their own, I don't know, whatever, strengths to the party, you might say. So some of the alcohol inks might add a certain intensity into the color scheme. Unless, you don't have to do all that. If you want to go for something a little bit more kind of mellow and soft looking, colored pencils or things like pastels are really good for that. You can, use multiple multimedia, to make certain areas of, in this case, some branches a little bit brighter and have some areas softer and duller looking, so you get a little bit of intensity, range, and contrast. Okay, now here's the thing. I have this area up on top of my rooftop here. Now that's supposed to represent snow because you don't see any textures up here, but I'm going to just add some brown tones up there just so it doesn't look like snow. And I vary it a little bit. It's a little bit darker, a little bit lighter. All right. Let's go with a little bit of a brighter red. You can see I don't use this one very often. All these pencils are the same age. They came out of the same set. So there's certain colors I just don't use too often. It's like the intensity gets keeps going up a little bit with each layer. Kind of color things, a little bit varied so that you get a little bit of contrast and richness rather than uniform and maybe monotonous. Okay, I mean, you can go for certain types of trees if it's like just radiant red and that's the way you want it, that's fine too, but I would kind of add it in slowly so that you can kind of gauge how much more you want of something. Okay, so let's add in a little bit of color variation with a new hue here. So in this area down here, that had some brown in it, and this area had brown, and here we're going with the brighter kind of fall tones, and in the dirt area, we'll use, I don't know, like light green to represent kind of Some drying grass, maybe. And then this is the green area, so I just go for a, kind of a range of green tones. In the shadow areas, maybe at the base of the cabin, I'll go for a little bit of a darker green. Kind of at the base of objects, you kind of transition some tones a little bit darker to a little bit lighter, so it kind of anchors them into the setting a lot more by, you know, casting that shadow. There's a little bit more of an olive green, earthy green. Just kind of keep it light and see if you like it. And if you don't like it, then don't add any more. If you like it, then you can add more. You can go for higher intensity, but just kind of going like this, or like that, a very light application. All right. Luckily, black is one of my softer Prismacolor pencils, so it can apply right over the top of those preliminary layers of pencil that I've applied. Sometimes when you get it kind of built up, you go in there and you're trying to apply and nothing's really transferring because it's, you know, already so kind of, you know, there's a lot of waxy buildup on there. And this paper here isn't matte paper, so it's kind of smooth, so I'm not able to apply as many colored pencil layers as, you know, matte paper would allow me to. They call it tooth when the paper has a little bit more texture to it. Okay, so let's go in and see about some additional brighter tones. Let's try to make these trees come alive a little bit more. And this is just a yellow here. It's kind of a golden yellow. Kind of goes in and saturates the imagery quite a bit more. It's very tacky to the touch here, as let me put my fingers down, because remember this alcohol is laying on top of a lot of that colored pencil. Okay, let's try some of this canary yellow. Remember, I'm going over the top of, you know, darker tones, so it's not going to look like that canary yellow, but it might add a little bit of a brighter, richer element into some of these. And here's a little bit of a golden yellow. Actually, that does, I don't know why that looks lighter. I don't know if it's kind of lifting some of the colored pencil off the card. I don't know why it would, but it almost seems like it is. Okay, let's see. Here's a little bit of a darker brown. I thought we could add a little bit more shadow into the scenario. Maybe I'll go for a little bit of a vignette around on the perimeter, just kind of darkening in the edges. I'm just kind of transition it a little bit though. Let's see if I have something like a really pale. Here we go. It's kind of like a pale, kind of pale orange, I guess. All right. Let's see. Here, let's use this a little bit of a darker brown. I'll get a little bit more variation on the roof. All right. Now, those are kind of the transparent media. I mean, colored pencils really aren't transparent. They're more kind of translucent, but you can kind of see through them. But the thing that will really kind of make your pieces pop are slightly more opaque mediums. Okay, so gel pens, paint pens are really good for that purpose. And I'll just kind of pick out some tones that are really similar to the ones that I've laid down on here. Okay, I didn't lay down white, but that could be one of them that I use. Maybe I'll use the smaller version though. Okay, so there's red in here. I could use red too, but let's go for the lighter tones. Orange, yellow. Okay, now, typically I kind of go with lighter tones, and then I work into darker tones with the transparent media, but when I'm working with opaque media, I usually go from dark to light, okay? Now, if you can't tell which, like, one's lighter than the other, then either one, okay? But orange would definitely be the darker of these tones right here. Okay, so right here, I'm just going to add in, and I usually do it in little dot form, but see in these lighter areas, that's where I'm adding some additional texturing, color, and opacity. Now what this can do is it can make these branches and everything more dimensional looking. Okay, so it's because I'm putting something light over something that is darker. Okay, it's not super dark, but it just kind of makes these objects stand out a little bit more. Now this is a 3mm pen. You can use your smaller, like extra fine tip ones, which are typically 0.7mm. Okay, these little bigger ones just kind of makes the process go by a little bit faster on larger objects. Okay, it might look kind of weird when you put, you know, just a few dots down too, because it's the only thing that has that texturing you're seeing. So you just kind of add it over everything, or a lot of areas, and it'll bring in the cohesion and similarity between other objects. So it just, so that orange right there doesn't just stand out on like a couple branches, it's in the background, on the neighboring trees. You can have it on the ground as kind of like fallen foliage down here too. It's visual continuity. Okay, now these are big thick pens, and this acrylic dries reasonably fast, but I'm kind of holding it up and I can see that, there's a bunch of wet paint sitting on my surface there, so you can just let it air dry, or you can heat set. I didn't heat set all the way. But it's a lot drier, though, than before I did that. Now, sometimes I don't heat set all the way because sometimes I want this paint to mix and merge physically with some of that paint that I already laid down. I think it, might blend a little bit better. Okay, so here, this is kind of looking, yellow stands out a lot more. So one thing I might do is use a little bit more sparingly. You can just kind of get the feel of it, take a look and see how it's looking from, distance. Otherwise, what we do is when we're applying this type of shape, which is these little tiny dots to a scene, sometimes we can get caught up in just only focusing on, a very small area in which we're applying that type of texture. So it's texture and contrast and dimension. So you kind of hold it out and see what it looks like at arm's distance once in a while. Because, sometimes doing this type of thing, it really, makes a bold statement when you're doing it. So you want to kind of be mindful of how much you're adding and how it's affecting the overall piece. All right, so a little bit of texturing and highlights and dimension. Let's go in with white. I won't heat set. I'm going to utilize less of this than I did with the yellow. The white kind of represents, your highlights, where the yellow is actually, a lot of the physical color of the, the branches. So, but this is kind of introducing the tone of the the page that we're utilizing. So it's like we started off with a piece of white paper and we worked through a lot of different images and textures, coloring, and it's like going back to the white that we started off with and bringing that into the, in this case, the foreground, the background, but also just kind of on the illuminated side of the branches, which is usually going to be the top side of the branch. So this is the top side of the branch right here, and this is the bottom side of it down here. So you go from light top to darker below. All right, let's heat set this and I'll add in some white pigment ink and we'll kind of bring all this together. I mean, it looks okay as is, but when you add in that white pigment ink, it really, it mellows everything out and brings it to life, I guess. Well, that should be enough. If it doesn't, then we'll see. Okay, so white pigment ink. Let's see. Cotton ball. Yeah, this cotton ball has been used. Well, let me see if I can use it one more time. Okay, so we have these areas of white on the cardstock, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in white from those illuminated areas or just in the sky where I didn't add any color, and I'm going to go into my objects, okay? Now, you can't really see too much here. Maybe I need to change, maybe there isn't anything on here. Here, let me change to a different part of the cotton ball. Now my pad here is not super juicy, okay? So I leave it kind of medium. And inking up like this. So that when I add this in here, so I'm starting the white and coming into here like this, it's not leaving like big blobs of white ink. It's almost like paint, okay? So it just kind of represents fog, so I don't want to be adding in a big slathering of white ink on here, okay? So you just kind of add it in your lighter area, and then you work into the darker area. Now, a lot of people, they just can't see it, which you really can't, because if you do like 2 taps, it's just barely anything applied. But when you apply more, it just kind of builds up really slowly, and then you can see that kind of misty effect, okay? So let's put some right around in here. So see that right there, that little mist right in here? And look at, it was like looking like that before, but now you have this textural variation right here to right here. That's why I don't do it over the whole thing, so you get this contrast between soft and illuminated and whatever, darker, richer, and shadows like that, okay? Now let's come into a couple of these trees right here. So the lighting is kind of right here, so I can illuminate a little bit of this tree like this. See, I'm kind of coming into a little bit more right there, but then it's a little bit less right here. Up top here, there's nothing. And maybe on this side of this tree. I'll put the light coming in between these two trees right here. Kind of like that. I push those whole things back quite a ways, I guess. You know, it makes these other trees behind the cabin look a little bit more distant. Now, if you ever apply too much, oh my gosh, I put way too much white ink on there. Just take your cotton ball, clean side, and just wipe it right off before it sets up completely. If you're using a piece of matte paper, it's going to soak in a little bit faster, but you do have, you know, plenty of time to kind of manipulate things. If you think you've added too much, you can just kind of wipe it right off. See this right here, this kind of light coming across that tree right there. And the white pigment ink does dry, I find, more see-through and thus darker looking than when you first apply it. So you might have to kind of, you know, reapply some after it starts setting up a little bit, drying. If you want it to be lighter looking in the end result. All right, I think that should do it. That gives you kind of the gist of, you know, altering your imagery. Again, kind of larch trees. Or you can make these trees green too. It could be, you know, just green evergreens or something like that in a non-winter setting. Just by coloring them. If you do that, you know, try maybe 3 or 4 variations of green, light, medium, and dark, and just kind of color it a little bit more kind of irregular, not so flat, you know, putting the same tones of green over the whole thing. I mean, you can try that, and you know, you add in highlights with, you know, your lighter green paint pens, gel pens, or something like that too. But yeah, use whatever colors you want on your imagery for whatever season you would like to depict. I've left this kind of bare up here because I'm thinking I'll put like some sort of quote stamp up here, you know, when I frame this into or formatted it into a card. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks as always for tuning into the Stampscapes channel.